we're going to watch some stuff today. A lot of this stuff comes from the React channel of Discord. Please, if you haven't already, throw some stuff in there. I'd love to take your suggestions and use it so we can watch it together. Let's go to the final one, which is almost an hour long, by Veritasium. And it's about how one company secretly poisoned the planet. No idea what that means, but this was uploaded apparently a week ago and has almost 10 million views, which is a little crazy. That is a little crazy, actually. I don't even know if I've ever accumulated that many views on YouTube.
In Chicago, people kept mysteriously dying inside their homes. It took 15 deaths for the authorities to realize that these people were getting killed by their fridges. Because fridges back then were no longer just boxes of ice. Instead, they relied on a chemical looping through the back to stay cold. And the best chemical for this job was methyl chloride, a toxic and virtually odorless gas. So if it somehow leaked from the fridge, it could kill you without warning. Other fridges used flammable gases instead, so a leak combined with a spark from the stove, and your house could suddenly go up in flames. So one company tried to solve this problem. But in the process, they accidentally created a seemingly magical substance. Soon, it made its way into a huge range of products, which were so popular, they ended up in nearly every home in America.
This is lead.
But what people didn't know was that these products came at a price. The chemicals used to make them were being released into the environment, slowly poisoning everyone on the planet, including me.
You have high levels of a chemical you never heard of.
It shocks me. Like, where could this have come from?
Almost every living creature, from polar bears to birds to fish, massive worldwide contamination by completely man-made chemicals that are fingerprints back to just a couple of companies.
This is a video about one of the biggest chemical cover-ups in history. For legal reasons, I want to note that this investigation is based on publicly available documents, recordings, and third-party opinions. All sources are linked in the description. The story all began with an attempt to save lives.
It might actually be microplastics.
In 1936, a chemical company called DuPont set out to find a safer alternative to the gases used in fridges, one that was neither toxic nor flammable. Their lead scientist on the project was a 27-year-old chemist named Roy J. Plunkett. He was experimenting with a gas called tetrafluoroethylene, or TFE. It's a pair of double-bonded carbons, each bonded to 2 fluorine atoms. One morning, as Plunkett was setting up a test, his assistant picked out a cylinder full of TFE and twisted the valve.
Oh, it's Teflon gas.
But nothing came out. Plunkett thought the gas must have leaked, but the cylinder still weighed about as much as a full one, so he grabbed a saw and cut the cylinder in half. Inside, he was shocked to see it was full of a white, slippery powder. So what happened to the gas? Well, what the chemist reasoned was that under the high pressure of the cylinder, one of the double bonds between the carbons in TFE must have broken. And now those 2 carbon atoms each had a bonding site free, so one of them probably grabbed onto a carbon from a different TFE molecule, breaking its double bond, and then that molecule did the same, and the process repeated again and again until all of the TFE was trapped in these long chains. The gas had polymerized into polytetrafluoroethylene, forming this slippery powder. Plunkett just wanted to get rid of it because it ruined his experiment. But before throwing it out, he decided to do some tests on it. So he tried pouring water on it, but the water just beat it off. So he tried acid. Again, nothing happened.
Plastic.
Then he tried the strongest base he had, but that wouldn't melt it either.
Water and acid.
Went through all of the solvents in the lab, but the powder remained intact. It wouldn't melt, corrode, or react with anything. It was seemingly indestructible. The reason it was so indestructible was because of this bond, the carbon-fluorine bond. See, out of all of the elements, fluorine is the greediest, the most electron-hungry atom. Its outer shell is a single electron away from being complete, which would make it perfectly stable. So fluorine really, really wants that electron. And because it's so small compared to most other elements, the protons in its nucleus can get close to the electrons of other atoms. And because of their positive charge, they pull on them really hard. So near a carbon atom, fluorine grabs onto one of the carbon's electrons to complete its outer shell. And this keeps the two atoms bonded together. But the fluorine isn't done there. It keeps tugging on the carbon's electrons, pulling them closer to itself,
he's grabbing his balls.
which makes fluorine slightly negatively charged and the carbon slightly positive. So now there's an electrostatic attraction that makes this bond even stronger. Now, in reality, electrons behave more like fuzzy clouds than the orbiting points in this animation, but the principle still holds.
So the same
In terms
effect.
of energy, this is actually the strongest single bond a carbon can form. So if other atoms or molecules get close, they're essentially ignored. And Plunkett's magic powder was completely covered in carbon-fluorine bonds, so it hardly reacted with anything. Okay, so he's got this incredibly nerd stuff. Was he really trying to get rid of it?
He actually didn't know what to do with it, because like, what do you do with a material that doesn't, react with anything? But luckily, his employer, DuPont, they were actually working with the US Army on the Manhattan Project. So they were refining uranium and plutonium, because of course there's a World War II reference in a Veritasium video. You just have to have it.
To get the fuel for nuclear bombs, enriched uranium, you first have to
It was
turn the uranium
Oppenheimer.
into a gas, uranium hexafluoride. It was a nasty chemical that corroded everything. So all the gaskets, seals, and miles of pipe in the plant at Oak Ridge had to constantly be replaced, slowing down production.
But then DuPont was like, listen, we have this seemingly indestructible chemical, right? It doesn't react with stuff, it doesn't corrode, so maybe we can try and use it against uranium
receiving a phone
hexafluoride.
call.
So they
I am back. It's time to continue to hear about DuPont's atrocities onto the world.
get a bunch of this powder, they cram it together under high pressure to create these cakes, essentially. Now you had
As I
a
eat
solid of this
Reese's.
material that you could machine into gaskets and cylinders that you could push into these pipes. They put these tube linings into the pipe, and boom, it works like magic, like a charm. The uranium hexafluoride was no match for this magic material.
As Gordon Fee, the manager of the nuclear weapons plant, put it, there was never a substitute considered, as far as I know.
The material worked so well that the Army wanted to use it for everything.
The same gaskets and seals were installed into fuel tanks and airplane engines to protect them from oil and water. And weapons manufacturing plants no longer had issues with the corrosive nitric acid needed to make explosives. DuPont saw the potential too, so they trademarked the material in 1944.
They didn't trademark it under the name polytetrafluoroethylene, because admittedly, that name kind of sucks. So they took TE from tetra, FL from fluoro, and then they had a bunch of these other miracle materials, rayon, nylon. So they took ON from the end of those, and boom, Teflon.
Nice. Okay. It's a good name. Under the Army's order, DuPont ramped up Teflon production at their test plant in Arlington, New Jersey, giving their whole supply to the government.
Fucking New
But
Jersey,
DuPont
bro.
struggled to produce enough Teflon to meet the military's demand.
Always up to some shit.
As their Arlington scientists put it, the
Teflon,
major advantages of polytetrafluoroethylene,
cool-ass
solvent resistance, and high thermal stability
Joe
offer
Bartolozzi.
obstacles from the standpoint of ease in fabrication.
You could only really mold Teflon into solids, so gaskets, seals, pipes, but you couldn't put it into water to make a spray because it doesn't dissolve in water. They actually didn't know anything that dissolved Teflon, but there was an even bigger problem at that point.
To polymerize TFE into Teflon, you can add a reactive atom or molecule that will hijack the first carbon double bond and start the reaction. This is called the initiator, and the bond formed between it and the first TFE molecule releases a small amount of energy. Then a bit of energy is also released when the next TFE molecule joins the chain, and the next, and the next. And if the process isn't controlled, the reaction gets very hot very quickly. And if it gets above 200 degrees Celsius, TFE rapidly decomposes into carbon and tetrafluoromethane, which releases even more energy all
Methane
at once.
gas.
This caused a massive explosion at the Arlington plant in 1944,
Always good.
killing 2 workers.
Oh.
You need a way to dissipate the heat, take the heat away from the reaction
Gas
without
is
it
always
staying
useful.
in there and therefore expanding and creating that
Yeah,
explosive
worse
force.
than methane,
Yeah,
right?
and one of the ways to do that was to have the reaction happening in water, because water can absorb a huge amount of energy before it ever heats up.
Right.
But if you inject TFE into a water cylinder, the gas doesn't dissolve. Even at high pressure, most of the TFE just stays on top. So if you add an initiator, the polymerization is triggered in one place, and so it can still cause an explosion.
Awesome.
What you need is some way to disperse the TFE
So
throughout
cool.
the water first, and to do that, DuPont needed help. In 1951, they purchased a special acid from 3M, the company behind Scotch tape. This acid, called PFOA,
Acid's
looked
always
almost
great.
exactly
Always
like
goes
Teflon.
well.
It had a chain of 8 carbon atoms covered in fluorines, but at the other end, there was a double-bonded oxygen and an OH group. That's what makes it an acid.
Yeah, acid
And
always
since
goes
there were
well.
8 carbons in the chain, DuPont also referred to the acid as C8. The tail end of C8, like Teflon, was hydrophobic, but the acid head group loved water. It was hydrophilic. So
'Cause
when
it's
you
an
add
acid, which is
C8 into
mostly
water,
water.
the molecules rearrange themselves so that the heads touch the water, but the Teflon-like tails don't. They create little bubbles all throughout the water, which are virtually dry on the inside. If you now inject TFE and stir the whole mixture up, well, the hydrophobic gas ends up in the middle of these C8 bubbles. And those bubbles are dispersed everywhere, evenly throughout the water. You know what this reminds me of? Is soap.
Nothing like putting acid in water to trap gas that won't dissolve.
Yeah,
So it's the great combiner that allows like
Nursery is
oil and water to
fucking
mix.
and now if you
bro.
sprinkle in initiator molecules, the
Also, the
initiator
water is
molecules
necessary,
also go
otherwise
into these bubbles. They start the
explosion.
polymerization reaction. So from TFE to Teflon. But now, since it's happening spread all throughout these bubbles, the heat is evenly dissipated throughout the water, and no one explodes.
And since Teflon is now suspended in a solution,
W.
you can spray it onto surfaces like a coating. This thing doesn't stick to anything. How do you stick it to the gaskets? You know, how do you actually use it?
I'm sure that goes
That's
well
a good question
for everybody.
So the trick was actually the surface had to be really rough. So what you do is you sandblast it to create grooves and imperfections at this like nanoscopic level. Now, if you sprayed a coating on, what happens is if you heat it up, the water evaporates. The C8, it also evaporates, but Teflon, instead of it evaporating, it just softens up. So although there's no chemical interaction here, now it's mechanically stuck to the surface. That's how they got it to stick.
But what if I wanted to get rid of it,
With the war
Bob?
over, the Army lifted the secrecy bans on the Teflon patents, and DuPont was allowed to sell it commercially. And suddenly, people all over the world were coating everyday items in Teflon, trying to create a world-changing product.
One day in 1954,
Gulp.
a French engineer, Marc Gregoire, tried putting Teflon on his fishing gear to prevent tangles.
But then his wife saw him doing that, and her reaction was that this is absolute nonsense. No one is ever going to use this. You should do something that someone's actually going to use. So how about you put it on a pan? Make a pan non-stick.
And once these pans hit the market, it was a cooking revolution.
Teflon, Teflon,
Teflon.
And DuPont knew exactly how to market it.
even oatmeal won't stick to Teflon.
Hey, neat! Let me try.
And it wasn't just non-stick pans. Teflon, C8, and chemicals like it were used in everything.
Slipaway contains the magic of DuPont Teflon.
Suddenly, we had Teflon stain-resistant carpets and stain protection sprays like 3M's Scotch Guard. Jackets lined with Teflon were waterproof and breathable.
Gore-Tex is the brand name.
Teflon was so inert that medical implants made out of it wouldn't be rejected by the body. It was used to coat the Statue of Liberty's steel framework to save it
bet
from
that went
corrosion.
well.
And even bullets were coated with Teflon to minimize the damage they did coming out of the gun barrel. The term Teflon was so ubiquitous that when the Italian mobster John Gotti was being prosecuted in the late 1980s, none of the charges against him would stick, so he was dubbed Teflon Don. By the late 1990s,
That's crazy.
the Teflon business generated roughly $1 billion in yearly sales for DuPont.
Teflon has a great future, and its uses will be many.
The chemicals were everywhere, even where they shouldn't be.
There's something wrong with this water.
They won't tell us what it is.
Gulp.
The man behind the camera is Earl Tennant, a farmer in West Virginia.
And this is what they expect a man's cows to drink on his own property.
He suspected that something in this creek was poisoning his cows.
This is 153 of these animals that I've lost on this farm. You can see the discoloration in the hair here on her neck. And they keep trying to tell me there's nothing wrong with these things. I can call the West Virginia State Veterinary, and the only thing he asked me is, do you have a good attorney?
Earl was desperate, so he hired a lawyer.
He came to our offices armed with boxes of VHS videotapes. He started watching these videotapes, and, you know, there was a serious problem here.
Something wrong with this cow. Slobber's running clear to the ground.
The animals were wasting away, and they were skin and bones, and they had tumors and black teeth, and you could see on the videotape white foam coming out of the pipe on this landfill next door with these animals standing in the white foam. The hair on their hooves was being eaten off by whatever was in the water.
This is a lower pipe. You can see what's coming out of it.
It was
Chilling,
a discharge pipe, and it had the marking of E.I. DuPont de Nemours and Company.
And the landfill that pipe was draining from belonged to DuPont's massive factory complex outside of Parkersburg, West Virginia, just 6 miles away. That factory was Washington Works, the first commercial Teflon plant. It provided jobs for almost 2,000 people in the town, and DuPont's presence was felt everywhere.
I have been a resident of Parkersburg for 48 years. I do not work for the DuPont Company, but I have seen how their people have done much for the cultural growth of this community.
There are facilities for tennis, camping, swimming, softball, and more than 20 areas equipped for cookouts and family picnics.
DuPont took care of the community. So when the town folk got word that Earl Tennant hired a lawyer to investigate, they shunned him and his family.
As his sister-in-law put it, we'd walk into a restaurant and everybody in the restaurant would get up and leave.
That's crazy.
But Earl wasn't scared off, and neither was Rob.
I thought this was going to be pretty.
Bro, how powerful would that be? Imagine being able to go to a restaurant, nobody's there. Totally fine. Unbothered. I guess you'd have to worry about the employees and stuff spitting in your food or pissing in it or something, but imagine not having to worry about people in a restaurant. That'd be so awesome. Kick your feet up. I'd be using that to my full advantage. I'm gonna get butt ass naked. That wasn't really the point. Maybe that's why people leave. Crazy.
Straightforward.
See, the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, the EPA, dictates exactly which chemicals are safe to be disposed of in a landfill and in what amounts.
We would get those records and permits, and it would tell us which chemical was causing this problem. But none of those records were really showing anything that was really causing a problem, nothing that would explain that white foam.
Whatever was in Earl's water wasn't on the permits.
That's crazy.
Now, already in the 1950s, people knew that Teflon, specifically PTFE, was pretty safe.
But they were dumping
it's
it
a long
in the
and
water
extremely
without
inert
permission?
molecule. So if you ingest it, your body just flushes it out. However, if you heat Teflon to 350 degrees Celsius, it starts releasing fumes that make people sick. This often happened to workers in Teflon plants. Stray PTFE powder would
Nasty
fall
fumes.
onto their
So
cigarettes
bad.
as they were working, and then later they would accidentally smoke one of these cigarettes. Luckily, the symptoms were mild.
I'm
Fatigue,
smoking the
tightness of
Teflon
chest,
pack.
headaches, and they
It's
would usually
got me
pass within
geeking.
48 hours. It was called polymer fume fever.
And even though it rarely happens today, it's why you should never overheat your Teflon pan to these temperatures, especially if you have pet birds at home, because the fumes are much more toxic to them. But Teflon couldn't have poisoned Earl's cows. There were no fumes or high temperatures, so there must have been something else in the water.
Rob filed a legal request for all of the Washington Works operational records, and DuPont sent them over. more than 60,000 documents.
Oof.
A lot of folks would try to say, okay, you want a lot of documents, we'll give you a lot of documents, and hope that there'd be no way somebody could actually wade through all of these files and all of these materials.
A lawyer?
But I am the kind of person that I do dig in, and I do want to go through those documents.
That's the exact type of shit a lawyer would do.
And in those files, a certain chemical kept popping up everywhere. C8.
I never saw the kinds of things I was seeing now in these documents from DuPont.
In 1961, the same year Teflon pans hit the U.S. market,
I'm foaming from the
DuPont's
mouth.
in-house scientists tested C8
You
on
see
rats,
it in the water. It's not
ingesting
good, people.
as little as 1.5 milligrams
Folks, I'm
of
telling you,
C8
it's so
per
bad.
kilogram of body weight caused the rats' livers to grow abnormally, and a dose of 570 milligrams per kilogram was lethal. For reference, sodium cyanide, one of the most dangerous poisons, is lethal to rats in doses of 5 to 15 milligrams per kilogram.
Oh.
But even though C8 was less fatal, it was concerning for two other reasons. First, like Teflon, its tail is made of carbon-fluorine bonds,
Which is hard
makes
to
it
get rid of.
incredibly stable. So C8 wouldn't break down in the environment for decades. And second, C8 looks like the fatty acids that humans and animals need for normal functioning, just with fluorines instead of hydrogens. So the concern was that C8 could get into the bloodstream, hitch a ride on the proteins that transport fatty acids around, and get almost anywhere in the body. And because of the carbon-fluorine bonds, humans and animals have no way to break down C8.
And then when I light myself to 300, I'd explode. That wouldn't be good either. I was just gonna do that.
So it could slowly build up, mimicking those fatty acids and potentially disrupting the systems they regulate, like the liver.
Cancel the self-immolation. I can't.
Persistent, bioaccumulative. So the concern was, it's like a ticking time bomb. It's got more opportunity to cause harm.
As a safety measure, that same rat study suggested that all these materials should be handled with extreme care, and that contact with skin should be strictly avoided. In 1962, DuPont redid the study and confirmed that.
Yo, let's just put a little concerning line in the sentence of page 62 of our 10,000 page document saying to handle carefully. Let's just sneak that in the middle of the document, surrounded by everything. Yeah, we tried our best to tell everybody, guys.
High doses of C8 kill rats through injury to the stomach, intestine, brain, lungs, and pancreas. Then in 1965, they found those same toxic effects in dogs. The evidence was mounting.
They were even studying monkeys. Some of the monkeys were dropping dead. These chemicals were causing toxic effects in multiple organ systems in multiple species. All these studies weren't being shared with the scientific community.
And likely, no one outside of DuPont would have noticed something was wrong if it was not for
tooth decay, the most widespread of all diseases.
In the 1950s, tooth decay was a nationwide problem.
Oh God,
so
is
the
this
US
why we have
started
fluoride?
adding inorganic fluorides like sodium fluoride to the public water supply. This helped fight cavities.
16 years after
Is it because
fluoridation,
of Teflon?
all children will have 65% less tooth decay.
Nobody show RFK this video. He's gonna freak out. Nobody show Junior this video, bro. He's gonna be like, he's gonna death rattle hearing that.
1975, researchers wanted to know if that inorganic fluoride was getting into people's blood. So they sampled blood from around the US, and the results were as expected. More fluoride in the tap water meant more fluoride in the blood.
But they found another type of fluorine in the blood too, which was organic fluorine, carbon-fluorine bonds. And it didn't follow the same trend.
Well, these researchers were wondering, where's this?
So autism was made in the 50s because of the fluoride, huh? That's when we invented this. This is the reason I like video games. Because of DuPont. Well, I guess because of tooth decay.
Coming from, because this.
That's when autism did whoa. You got it, man. Yeah, you got it. Yep, that's the future right there. That's the future that this administration is catering to. That's what the Joe Rogan. It's like they know me.
This is not a naturally occurring substance. And they did research and they found that 3M was making these organic fluorides, the things like PFOA, all right? So they approached 3M in 1975, asking them, hey, we found this stuff in the general U.S. population's blood. You know, could it be your...
No, DuPont didn't make fluorine. Fluorine's a chemical itself. Fluoride is a... Oh, God, chemistry. Is it "ide" when it's a water mixture? Correct? Am I, or is it based off of its charge? Am I stupid? So is fluoride actually bad for your teeth? No. It's great for your teeth. It's actually a huge reason we don't suffer from tooth decay. Ide is the amount. Okay, so it's its charge. Fluoride is fluorine with a negative charge, correct? And its fluoride was put into the water because it actually helps with tooth decay. Because there is they kind of glossed over it because it's a little relevant. They might, we haven't obviously watched everything, but no, it's not to turn the frogs friggin' gay. My God. No, autism isn't stored in the teeth. That's not, no. It's put in the water because it helps fight off your teeth from decaying. Like, scientifically, that's a fact. Like, it's been shown, it's seen. That is what it does. Fucking RFK Jr. and his infinite wisdom of steroids and bad decisions has claimed that it's a cause of autism. Therefore, we should remove it from the water. He is telling you that autism's in the water. That's the joke being made. In fact, no, that's not what causes it. It's more when you're born, your brain's like, I'm not doing all that shit. I'm going to be really awkward in public scenarios and be a little weird about textures and like stuff a lot. So there's a lot of layers happening right now, but no, it does not cause fluoride is good for you. It helps your teeth not be bad. In fact, there are places that don't put fluoride in their water currently, and you can actually see their horrendously bad dental rates because of their tooth decay, because they don't have fluoride in their water. So, if for some reason you're American and our stupid administration decides to remove fluoride, get a checkup on your teeth to make sure they're good to go, because they might stop being as good. It's to supplement the lack of it's not iron. Whatever, bruh. Anyway. So the autism water is making our teeth gay. No, that's your brain liking penis. So Mm-hmm. Right. And then what happens? or vagina, whatever, you know. No. All right, back to the video.
Course. And 3M pled ignorance.
But just 3 months later, 3M compared the spectrum of organic fluorine from the study to their own chemicals, and it was a match. Their chemicals were getting into the blood of people all across the United States, but they didn't tell the researchers.
That's crazy.
3M and DuPont were
That's
worried,
crazy.
so they checked their own workers' blood. And they found that they too were contaminated with C8 at levels 1,000 times higher than those in the study. And when DuPont checked their medical records, many of these workers...
This is very cool. I don't know if this is like the documentation being videoed. Whoever's doing this shit, I love this. I might have to steal something like this if I do videos myself for true crime. I might get a fucking text documents and a fucking highlighter and fucking circle shit, and because I'm sitting here like, whoa, what do I read? What do I read?
Workers were showing signs of liver disease. Meanwhile, DuPont
me
was
all
dumping
excited.
almost
I'm
10
like,
tons of C8 into the Ohio River
lighting.
each year, and they were piling up
10
thousands more
tons?
tons as C8 sludge that would leach from the landfill next to Earl's farm, all while showing commercials like these.
And the water that eventually flows to the river is collected at 5 points and analyzed to make sure we don't pollute the Ohio.
And by the early 80s, the first cancer study is done in rats, and it confirms PFOA causes, not just might be linked with, but causes testicular tumors. All right.
That
sends
really
alarm
bad.
bells off within the company, because
That's
the
really
concern
bad.
is, of course, we're putting this in the air, we're putting it in the water, it's in Teflon.
Did that why my balls big?
DuPont collected samples around Washington Works, and C8 wasn't just in the river, it was in the public water supply.
Had to get the joke out of the way.
So in
Sorry.
1984, DuPont officials met to assess whether C8 should be swapped for a safer chemical.
Oh,
But their
really?
conclusion was
Should
that
it?
currently none of the options developed are, from a fine powder business standpoint, economically attractive.
So let's just keep
C8
poisoning.
stuck around, and DuPont just came up with a safe dose for drinking water.
DuPont scientists are the first people on the planet to say what would be a safe level for humans. They calculated something like 0.6 parts per billion, which they rounded up to 1. And the importance of that is, at that time, that was about the lowest level you could detect in water. Essentially, if we can detect it, it's too high.
So to put that into perspective,
I think I'm detecting
here
it.
is one 2,500
I'm
liter
detecting
tank
it.
of water.
I'm seeing it.
Filled to the brim. Now imagine you take 1 drop of PFOA, 0.05 milliliters, and you place it not in one of these tanks or 2 or 3, 20 of these tanks. That's 1 part per billion, and that's the number DuPont thought would be unsafe for humans to drink.
And after determining
20
its own
droplets.
safety metric, DuPont tested the landfill wastewater leaching into Earl's Creek. It came back at 1,600 parts per billion.
They didn't tell anybody. So at that
And
point,
they didn't
I
tell
thought I
anybody?
figured out what had finally happened to the cows.
Rob compiled all the evidence into a 900-page letter and sent it to the EPA, the Department of Justice, and even the U.S. Attorney General.
I'm sorry. They found the closest landfill had 1,600 times the amount of safe amount of their chemical, and we're like, nah, let's not tell anybody. What?
And just a few months later, DuPont settled with Earl Tennant and his family for an undisclosed sum, although they didn't admit to any wrongdoing.
But
Milli,
the
milli,
stuff
milli,
wasn't
milli,
just
milli,
in the
milli,
water
millis.
the cows were drinking. This was in
everything.
Surrounding communities' public wells, right? People around Mr. Tennant, the tens of thousands of people in that community had likely been drinking this for decades and didn't know.
So Rob sued DuPont again, now on behalf of the 70,000 people around Parkersburg who were unwittingly exposed to C8. And it wasn't just Parkersburg or West Virginia.
In the year 2000, researchers analyzed blood samples from thousands of Americans all across the country. And 100% of those samples came back positive for C8, at an average of 5 parts per billion.
Oof.
But if virtually everyone in the US is contaminated, how harmful could C8 really be?
This is exactly what Rob had to find out to have a fighting chance.
I was about to say, does that mean I have some of it in me?
Against DuPont. So in 2005, he
God, so
spearheaded
awesome.
a medical study of everyone
I love when
around
greed
Washington
changes
works.
my life, and it's not even
Scientists
my
need to
own.
know if the
Not even
chemical
my own
C8
greed.
causes any health problems by completing a health questionnaire and having your blood tested.
So what you're saying is it is why my balls are big.
You can help.
Analyzing the blood samples and medical records took 7 long years.
And many in Parkersburg passed away before a verdict was even reached, including Earl and his wife Sandra.
But finally, in 2013, an independent science panel had the results. They confirmed a probable link between C8 and 6 human diseases, including thyroid disease, testicular cancer, and kidney cancer. And these findings were based solely on the nearby community, with an average C8 blood level of 28 parts per billion. So, for example, an average American male has around a 1 in 43 chance of developing kidney cancer. It's around 1 in 73 for females. But a person with more than 30 parts per billion of C8 in their blood serum might have about double the odds. So roughly 1 in 22 for males and 1 in 37 for females. But the data in many of these studies only included survivors, not people who might have already died from C8 exposure. So the verdict was that the findings must be interpreted with caution. The true risk of C8 might be even higher.
Yeah, I'm fucking cautious, all right.
Luckily, once these studies were published in 2013, DuPont was pressured by the regulators to phase out C8.
And by 2017, they had to pay out over $600 million to victims of C8 exposure, which is a pretty small price to pay for a company that made almost $80 billion in sales just that year.
And all throughout, DuPont denied any wrongdoing. But that wasn't the end of it.
Guys, there is a creek. There is a little river where my mom's family grew up. And like a bunch of them have developed breast cancer multiple times. Was it near a landfill? Yes. Yeah. Oh my God. Well, I guess I know why. Holy shit. Sue, well, it's not my mom. It's like a few of my aunts. Like it's a little that's probably their prerogative.
For Parkersburg
That's
or
insane.
anyone else, because DuPont separated its entire Teflon business into a spin-off company, Chemours, that agreed to use a different chemical. So what was it?
They simply took C8 and knocked 2 carbons off and started making C6.
They called it Gen X. Because it was shorter and had an oxygen atom interrupting the carbon chain, it was expected to be more degradable. So Chemours claimed a dose as high as 70 parts per billion of Gen X in drinking water would still be safe.
Bruh.
That chemical gets shipped to the same plant in West Virginia. So now Gen X goes into the air. Gen X goes into the Ohio River. Gen X is found in public water supplies. So Gen X is allowed to come out into the world, be used in Teflon. Then the cancer study is done, which shows Gen X causes the exact same 3 tumors in rats that PFOA did. Liver, testicular, and pancreatic.
I can't believe it.
And the fact that its chain is shorter also makes Gen X more mobile. so it could contaminate larger areas. The truth is, we just don't know enough about it, and that's exactly the problem.
It took us decades to get to the point of finally addressing C8. They simply tweak it a bit, change the chemical name. All of the science and all of the concern, that's on C8. This is C6 or C9 or C4. You don't have enough evidence that these other ones are bad. This is whack-a-mole. We get to the point we're addressing one and the new one pops up and we're told we have to start over.
And it isn't just C8 or Gen X.
They belong to a family of over 14,000 different man-made chemicals, all covered in carbon-fluorine bonds. And companies can make them however they want. C7s, C9s, branched, polymers, acids. The generic term for all of these substances is PFAS, per and polyfluoroalkyl substances. And like Teflon, they have almost magical qualities.
Wow.
They repel liquids, so PFAS are used to make clothing waterproof. They're also grease resistant, so we coat things like fast food wrappers and microwave popcorn bags in PFAS to prevent stains. Waterproof lipstick and mascara, hygiene products, and even contact lenses have PFAS in them.
Even the screen you're watching this on likely has a PFAS anti-smudge coating.
The trouble is that the same carbon-fluorine bonds that make PFAS so stable and useful in consumer products also make them incredibly persistent in the environment.
They're making my eyes gay?
Which is why you might also know PFAS under a different name.
That's why I keep looking at men. Damn it! DuPont!
Forever chemicals. They have been found everywhere, from bustling cities to untouched areas of wilderness. Every continent, including Antarctica, has PFAS all over it.
So
almost
fucked.
every living creature, from
no wonder
polar
this video
bears
from a
to
week ago has
birds
10
to
million
fish.
views.
I mean, this stuff is being
so
found
fucked.
everywhere. So massive worldwide contamination, but by completely man-made chemicals that are fingerprints back to just a couple of companies.
Even though companies knew how dangerous these chemicals were 50 years ago, they decided not to inform the public and the regulators. So we're only finding out about this global contamination now. And there have been many cases where important...
And we have microplastics. This doesn't even go over microplastics. Like, everything's got microplastics on it. In it, on it, through it.
Public health information doesn't get widely disseminated for years. And whenever that happens, media coverage can be inconsistent, which is why I've partnered up with Ground News as the sponsor of this video. Their platform reveals how stories like these are covered across the media landscape. For example, a recent wastewater. You can also percent to the it's highlighted on their blind spot feed. And now,
oh yeah, get me out of here.
Okay, now I want to find out how much of these chemicals is actually in my blood.
Oh,
so
God.
I have a little test here.
Oh, God.
I hate the idea of drawing my own blood. Okay. That was pretty easy, actually. I was really worried that there was not going to be enough blood coming out. But no, there's plenty. So the question is, how much of these dangerous chemicals are in my blood?
It's been 5 months.
Has anyone ever come
Time's
back
flown
with
by
blood that
so
has
fast.
zero PFAS
I'm so
whatsoever?
thankful for being welcomed into this amazing community.
PFAS since 2007, and I've never seen a non-detect.
And you're cool too,
way.
Sneak.
So I hear that 98% of the population has PFAS in their blood, but I'm looking for that 2% that doesn't, because I've yet to see them.
That's incredible. I mean, very, very bad incredible, but wow.
But if everyone on Earth has trace amounts of these chemicals in their blood, how much harm could they really be doing?
I want to make a distinction because it turns out not all PFAS are equally dangerous. You can kind of split them up into two groups. First up, you have long, repeating chains of carbon-fluorine bonds that are tens or hundreds of thousands of atoms long. So stuff like Teflon. These are so big and inert that even if you do ingest them, your body's just going to flush them out. They can't be absorbed.
It would be the smaller ones
so you're pretty
because
safe.
they're more mobile.
They're
right?
called fluoropolymers because of the long repeating chains of carbon and fluorine bonds.
They're less
But the catch
inert
is,
because they're
to
less
make
long
these
and bonded
fluoropolymers,
strongly.
stuff like Teflon, you need to use processing aids, things like PFOA or Gen X, and those are the nasty ones. These molecules are 5 to 10 carbons long, which makes them small enough to actually enter the bloodstream. They have functional groups at the ends that are usually acids. The most common ones
Yeah, we're out
are
here pissing Teflon.
perfluoroalkyl acids, which means
True.
that they can bind to the proteins in your blood
True.
and be transported anywhere in the body.
I'm out here peeing out Gen
they
X.
slowly accumulate and build up over time. Now, there are more than just 2 groups of PFAS and even different definitions of what PFAS even are, but most of what we know really relates to just a handful of chemicals from this group here, to these perfluoroalkyl acids.
Perhaps the most
That is crazy, man. And I thought that the gas that I released was bad.
comprehensive document on PFAS toxicity was published in 2022 by the National Academies of Sciences, Engineering, and Medicine, and it looked at only 7 perfluoroalkyl acids.
Oh, good.
These are sister chemicals to PFOA,
Sweet.
and some of them, like PFOS and PFHXS,
These are
were
words.
used heavily in the production of stain and water-resistant products, like 3M's Scotchgard, before they too got phased out due to toxicity concerns. The report surmised that if the sum of these 7 acids in your blood is
Serum
below
sum.
2 parts per billion, there shouldn't be any harm. If your level is between 2 and 20 parts per billion, there's a potential for harmful health effects. Although the
How do I
exact
know?
mechanism by which PFAS cause harm isn't fully understood, exposure has most consistently been associated with high cholesterol, a decreased immune system response to vaccines and infections, kidney cancer, and decreased growth in infants. But PFAS have also been linked to dozens of other conditions.
Thyroid disease, decrease in bone mineral density, type 2, oh my God, renal disease, hypertension, breast cancer. Wow. That is crazy, dude. I actually like, because it's funny because it's not like my family didn't know that the creek got them sick. It's kind of been understood in that area of St. Louis that the landfill there did cause these things. I'm not sure if it's Teflon that caused it though, or PFOAs or whatever, I guess. I could have sworn it's something to do with nuclear waste. There's a documentary on could be HBO about it. I don't remember what it's called, but there's a documentary about the nuclear waste landfill in St. Louis that has like affected a lot of people. I don't know. It could be this though. Maybe I'll get one of those
And
blood
above 20
kits and
parts
see
per
what
billion,
happens.
the risk is even greater.
See how much I inherited.
So where do
it.
I fall on this graph?
I certainly did not have
Right. So I have a
reduced
result
fetal
here.
growth.
You're
I
not
was
gonna
a
tell
big
me what
ass
yours were
baby.
before I see mine?
No.
All right.
You're positive for PFOA.
Okay.
The level for PFOA
Okay.
for a US person went down from 5 parts per billion around the 2000s to around 1.46, what you have. So you're super average for a US person.
Great. Okay.
The good news is, though, no Gen X for you or for me, which is great.
All right, let's go.
But the real surprise, I guess, is PFOS, the sister chemical. And it was used in a similar way, so stain-resistant carpets, treated clothing, and your result is at 8.93 parts per billion, whereas the US average is 4.3. Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it is crazy because it was discontinued pretty much in 2002.
This is not the results I expected. I honestly expected very boring results of like, yeah, you're around the
Maybe it was from all the walls of paint I licked.
middle of the pack or a little bit on the low side.
And then for PFHXS, basically PFOS, but 6 instead of 8 carbons, your levels here are almost 7 parts per billion, but the US average is 1 part per billion. You're higher than 95% of Americans.
He's cooked.
It just it shocks me because like I was fully walking into this meeting expecting to be, roughly average.
Yeah, to me it's scary. You live a normal life thinking that you're taking care of everything, and then you have high levels of a chemical you never heard of.
The combined sum of all the PFAS detected in my blood was 17.92
Sounds very
parts per billion,
lawsuity to me.
more than double the US median. I'm just below the level where the national academies recommend additional screenings for PFAS-related diseases.
I had no idea I would come back with such elevated levels. I'd love to get the level sort of down a bit to a level
I'm
where I
fucking
feel like
worried.
it's more in line with the general population.
Yeah.
But like, where could this have come from?
I get tested.
There are three main ways we get exposed
I
to
can.
forever chemicals, and the one you'll hear the most about in the media is likely PFAS-containing products.
Teflon.
Shampoo, dental floss, paints, varnishes.
Potentially dangerous chemicals.
Dangerous chemicals.
Toxic chemicals.
Teflon
People
pan.
are throwing out their non-stick cookware.
My wife threw out all our non-stick pans over a year ago, and since then we've been using stainless steel. She is very good at making it not stick. Me, not so much. But are pans really the problem?
The actual coating on the pan is Teflon, which again is just a long inert chain of carbon fluorine bonds. So even if you ingest it, it doesn't react with your body.
If you have a pan like that at home, you probably don't need to throw it out.
The same
That's
goes for
heartwarming.
most other PFAS-containing products. Waterproof clothing, stain-resistant furniture, and sweat-proof watch bands might all release some level of PFAS, but the risk of direct exposure through skin is likely low. So the bigger problem is how easily PFAS from these products can end up in the environment. And many of the factories that make these products don't have a good track record of keeping the chemicals contained.
People don't understand the stories
So
that you
cool.
see, for example, what was happening in the community in West Virginia.
Microcosm.
This is the same chemical and the same things that we're seeing play out now in Australia and in Japan, in Italy, in Germany, in the UK. I mean, there are a lot of folks that are still not grasping the fact that these are the same chemicals.
Our second main source of exposure is food.
Yeah, all the people saying America is cooked. Join the circus, clowns.
A lot of it comes packaged in PFAS-treated materials like takeout boxes, microwave popcorn bags, and burger wrappers.
Is it a tiny amount? Is it a ridiculously tiny amount?
We actually did tests at the lab with stuff that usually contains PFAS. So, microwave popcorn, fast food wrappers, paper cups that are waterproof. So I have tap water here from a house in London. Could we boil some water, because usually you interact with these products when they're hot, and then see if any of the PFAS leaches off, and you potentially eat them or drink them?
This is citizen science, right? So it's like, there might be some error, but with a solid control, and then with the same tap water going to all of them, we can at least get something.
Yeah, and even if we get nothing, we'll know that people are probably safe using these products. Right.
Whisk it around.
Yeah, really get that PFAS in that
Juice
water.
is going.
Right, get the
Well,
PFAS
it's
juices
supposed to
going.
be safe.
Yeah, get
for
that
human
PFAS in there,
consumption.
baby.
Yeah.
It's the wild thing.
We sloshed it around there, hot water, boiling water, for around 30 seconds, and then we tested that water to see if any of the PFAS that are used to coat these items would actually make it into the water. So here's what I got. And these are parts per trillion now. So for PFOA, good news, basically no detection anywhere, except for the microwave popcorn. I will say these are very low levels, but hold your horses, because the microwave popcorn gets worse.
The thing about microwave popcorn, it's sitting in there wrapped up with the popcorn for months or years before you ever stick it in your microwave. That gives those chemicals plenty of time to like leach into the oils, and it's going to go all over the popcorn and you're going to eat it.
Homemade popcorn wins again, baby.
This could explain some of our own results. The level for PFPEA, which is a shorter variation of PFOA,
Now
came
my
back at 10 parts
Plasto butter.
per trillion after the popcorn bag test. And you can see similar results in some of the other PFAS species.
Okay. God damn, microwave popcorn's a fucking criminal and a half, dude. Can I sue Big Popcorn? Yeah, where's fucking Orville, dude? I got some words.
But then microwave popcorn actually drops for PFOS. Why could that be? We don't actually know.
I was gonna say maybe the PFAS like went on that wrapper and found its friends and just hung out there.
Yeah, could be.
Maybe
I
we
know
just-
we've only done,
maybe we just
like,
stop
one test
fucking
here,
putting
no
it in shit.
measurements, so we can't conclude much from this.
Maybe
But
we just
there's
don't.
something to be said for when you're using these products, They're going to leach into your water, leach into your food.
And research tends to agree. A 2019 study found that eating fast food and microwave popcorn especially can increase your PFAS load, while eating home-cooked meals doesn't. But even something as simple
Hold fucking up.
Your PFAS
Hold
load, while
up.
eating home-cooked meals
What is this?
doesn't.
What the fuck is that? What is that? What the fuck is that pizza? That is a pizza with just mushrooms and tomatoes on it. What the hell is that? I don't even see cheese. I don't even see cheese. And don't you fucking say it's under the sauce. That doesn't look Chicagoan. Also, even if it is trash, this is crazy. You can't afford home cooked meals. Yes, you can. Yes, you can. It's actually cheaper. Actually cheaper now, which is sad. You can get more food out of $10 making at home per serving, whatever, than you would spending $10 for some sort of meal at a restaurant. Everything's fucking $20. You buy fast food for 2 people, it's fucking $20. You know how much $20 can get you in a kitchen? It's great, dude. There's so many geniuses on like TikTok and stuff too, because the dude I don't know if he still does it. Hood Meals, he was doing it throughout COVID, blew up tremendously because everybody was trying to like do super scrupulous stuff during it. Hood Meals, just a magnificent artist. I mean, just a great dude in his element, making food out of the littlest possible means. Beautiful guy to watch in his kitchen, man. I mean, there's so many people who do that now similarly, not necessarily like the brokest of broke, but they're like, here is something under $20 that'll get you a bunch of stuff. There's a woman who she does the Taco Bell recipes. She replicates Taco Bell recipes because she worked there for so long. She does another series where she makes them with just dollar store food. Like she gets just dollar store food and makes things. Like all of her ingredients are from dollar store. She was like, I can't get eggs from the dollar store, so I used applesauce in my baking because that's an alternative, by the way. If you don't want to pay for eggs to bake things and still want to bake, you can use applesauce. Fun fact. There's a lot like TikTok's a great place for kitchen hacks. But yeah, you can afford food at home. You absolutely can. Don't let people, you know what that shit is? You know what that shit is? That's fucking big fast food telling you to spend money. That's big fast food. That's Mr. McDonald's coming over being like, no, you can't afford that. Get a Big Mac. You can actually afford it more. It's comical. It's comical how much money you save not doing that. You know what my financial guy told me? That the worst, and this is hypocritical because I ordered food today, but we don't order food very often, so please don't judge me. The last time I ordered food from that place was last August. The worst financial thing that people our age spend unnecessarily is food. Food delivery, fast food, like food in general outside of the house, not like grocery, not day to day, like food outside of the house, DoorDash, especially food delivery. You know how many streamers I know that order coffee? Order coffee for delivery. It's crazy. Just make it at home? Exactly. They spend more getting a cup of coffee in the morning than I get getting a whole fucking tub and the creamer that lasts me easily 2 weeks or more. It's crazy. I'm telling you, do not fucking listen to that shit. It is so affordable. And you know, all you have to do is like it. It doesn't have to be fancy. You don't have to post it somewhere. It doesn't have to be something somebody made that took them 5 hours. It doesn't have to be as fancy as the TikTok that inspired you to make it. You just have to like it. You just have to eat it and enjoy it, and you will save money. You will absolutely save money. I actually really want to start doing cooking stuff again. I actually downstairs got delivered right as I started streaming as a tripod that I actually might be tall enough to do well filming around my kitchen, because I actually really want to do I don't know if I'll do like in real-time commentary, but I might do with like on TikTok what the sorority chef does, where he films himself making it and then he commentates afterwards. So yeah, local farmers market, huge. One of the worst. Well, there's a farmers market here, but in St. Louis, we lived in a city with a farmers market. It was awesome. It was awesome walking over there every weekend and just getting fresh shit. It was awesome. It was great. You can absolutely afford food. But what I'm telling you is you're being marketed to as if fast food is saving you. As always, you know, a company being like, we're doing you a great service by being so provisional. That'll be $10 fucking for this 5-layer burrito that was 90 cents when we first released it. So, yeah. You can afford it. Also, once more, what the hell is this pizza? What the hell is this pizza? We need to circle back. It is actually just sliced portobello and tomato, and I do not see the cheese. And it's really upsetting me. It's really upsetting me. I don't like it. That onion? No, it's mushroom. It's slices of portobello and tomato. That's it.
But even something as simple as reheating your food on a plate instead of in the original packaging could prevent PFAS from migrating to your food. Now, you might expect that these part per trillion levels we detected in the London tap,
unless that plate's also non-stick,
tap water are nothing,
or a microwave popcorn bag,
compared to the parts per billion you'd find in human blood. But the surprising thing is that to have 2 parts per billion of PFOA in your blood, you don't need to drink water with 2 parts per billion of PFOA in it. Because PFAS accumulate in your body over time. So even water with as little as 4 parts per trillion of PFOA combined with other exposure can be enough to maintain your blood levels this high. And this is why, in addition to food, water is your biggest source of exposure. This is especially true if you live near a PFAS factory where the local water is often heavily contaminated. But the same goes for areas near military bases or airports.
Gulp.
See, adding chemicals...
Me growing up near St. Louis's airport, not like right next to it, but gulp.
Like PFOA or PFOS to water
plants.
lowers its surface tension, so the water gets more slippery. And these chemicals also tend to foam up, so they make for an excellent ingredient in firefighting foams. They spread quicker, and the foam blocks access to oxygen extremely well. And since both military bases and airports frequently do fire drills with these foams, they end up seeping into the surrounding soil and groundwater.
Awesome.
But it doesn't stop there.
Currently, we have reached planetary saturation levels for PFAS, which means that when you look up at that cloud and it rains unsafe levels of at least 4 PFAS species.
It turns out that our entire water cycle is contaminated with PFAS. So even when it rains on the Tibetan plateau, that rain contains PFAS. To check...
Nah, we got to beat these guys with hammers. These guys got to go. DuPont's got to fucking go, man. That's crazy. That's actually crazy. They're actually so greed-ridden that they covered up toxicity in their product, put it in everything they made, poisoned for 3 decades, 4, 5 still are trying to get away with it, and now it's just endlessly cycled in our water. The first person that finds out how to break this shit down gets a Nobel Peace Prize. Easily. We need somebody on this stat. We need somebody on this right fucking now. If somebody finds a way to harmlessly break down this out of especially out of a person.
Check the water levels in your area. You can use these maps that show PFAS contamination across the US. Levels in your... Oh, that rain contains PFAS. To check the water levels in your area, you can use these maps that show PFAS.
Oh, here's the thing that he used. PFAS blood test. What's my exposure? Make sure I don't dox myself. Oh. I don't want to take your quiz. Where the fuck's the map? Interactive map. I clicked the wrong thing. Fuck me. I'm stupid. I am a fucking streamer. I'm stupid. Yes, take forever to load. Thank you. Yep. There it is. Ooh. Okay. God damn. Wait, let's go to the other display capture for this. You guys can see the full screen. That'll probably help. Good show. Look at this shit. The East Coast has gone bonkers. So left, light blue is drinking water above proposed limit. Dark blue is below it. Purple is military sites. Orangish red is other known sites. So let's zoom into where I grew up. Oh, no. There's well, you know what? That's not that bad. That's just the military site. That's the airport. That's Lambert. So objectively, one little spot in the whole city. Could be worse. It could be much worse. It did not help I grew up in North County, though. That did not help. I hope it does. It probably didn't. But the past couple of years, I lived down here because of college and afterwards. So do I want to drop the link? Yeah. There you go. If you guys want to be as paranoid as I. It does look a little here and there, though, because like there's some below proposed and above. Like here's above, below, below. East St. Louis got above. Some Illinois area has above. Let's go to where Northwest Arkansas, where I'm at currently. Damn, Little Rock's got a few things right there. Only, oh, these are both below. The northwestern area I live in is just, it says below proposed limit. It's good. That makes me feel better. Oh man. Oh man. Ooh. Wow, way to go, Fort Lauderdale. Oh, can't. Not a shocker there. Whoa, what's going on in Puerto Rico? Yeah, I want to see the scope of it elsewhere. Oh my God, there's two Americas. Run! What's going on in here? Chicago Island? What the heck? A lot going on in San Francisco, apparently. Eesh, that's a lot of light blue. You watching this, LA creators? I can't believe it. Damn, dude, the East Coast is just bombarded. Oh my God. So much. I mean, this is insane, right? This is because one company was so greedy in after World War II that they wanted so much money that they continuously produced a poisonous material and distributed it amongst everybody and sold it as a godlike chemical that it's everywhere and harmful. And once again, this is not even microplastics. This doesn't even talk about, this isn't even going, look at Alabama. God damn. That's a lot of shit going on. That is crazy. I'm actually a little shocked by how sparse Arkansas is. I was expecting a little worse here. There's actually not much at all. Just military bases and dark blue. I'm actually a little shocked by that, personally. I just can't get over this, bro. Look at fucking Massachusetts. Oh my God. That is, I mean, this is criminal. Millions of people probably have God knows what going on in their life, and it's because of this from decades ago. I hate that. You're visiting soon. Don't freak out about that. You don't. Okay. Once again, what he is saying in the video is this all accumulates over time. You're not going to go drink some water and get a bunch of it.
Areas, I wonder if the reason why some states are so sparse is because of lack of testing instead of lack of it being there.
True. Yeah, I can't imagine Arkansas would care. our wonderful governor signed that child labor bill recently. So, you know, I don't think the priorities are very good here. Yeah, don't catastrophize. I mean, it is very scary and concerning. But once again, you're not going to go to Boston and pick up testicular cancer because you drank some water. Okay, the problem is that this accumulates because it doesn't break down. That's the whole reason they started using it, is because it accumulates or it doesn't break down. The indestructibleness is the reason it's so problematic. Is they're so the stuff like Teflon isn't a problem because the chemical chain is so long. It's a very inert substance, which is just basically saying it's so slow that it doesn't do anything, so you just get rid of it. The issue with the other stuff is it's so small that it moves around and gets into other nooks and crannies of your body that the bigger stuff, like the Teflon chemical, can't. And that doesn't, you don't exactly excrete blood out of your body all the time. Not you usually don't want to do that. So yeah. So it's more that these areas have this stuff accumulated and staying around over time, and those people are eating, drinking, touching things that are using these or were exposed to these over time and have accumulated these chemicals over a long period. That's the concern, because they don't leave. That's why it's a problem, is because they don't leave. So it's probably smart to get a test, especially if you're in one of these big areas, because like they said, if you're somebody who's like above the 20 parts per billion, you might have like a concerning amount. It might lead to one of these dangerous sort of diseases.
Contamination across the US, Europe, and Australia.
What about Los Angeles? Encino. That's where I spent like 7 of the last 10 years.
Crescenta Valley.
Those are all high.
Yeah. Santa Clarita, some PFH excess level is crazy. So maybe you're getting your water from Santa Clarita.
Wow.
There's a calculator. It could give you what an estimate in your blood serum is. What we can try to do now is put that up in the calculator.
Blood serum.
You get something close to what you have if you want.
Sure.
PFH excess.
He's so mad. Look how upset he is.
Adult is 1 part per billion, and then the Santa Clarita water is around 37 parts per trillion.
If you look after like 10 years.
So after roughly 10 years of exposure, you would have 6.85 parts per billion in your blood. And then I can tell you that you are at 684.
That would explain things.
Now, I can't say for sure where my drinking water was coming from, but if I was consistently drinking water contaminated at similar levels, then that would explain my results. But if you're worried about your own water, you should contact your provider directly for the most relevant information. It's concerning just how unregulated drinking water has been.
It was actually only a year ago, in April 2024, that the US EPA finally set legal limits for PFAS in drinking water.
The safe level for PFOA went down from DuPont's initial 1 part per billion to 4 parts per trillion.
So we're no longer talking about 1 drop of PFOA in 20 of these tanks. We're talking about 1 drop in 5,000. That's 5 Olympic-sized swimming pools. And if there's even a drop of PFOA in there, the EPA is concerned.
The same 4 parts per trillion limit was also set for PFOS, the sister chemical.
Crazy.
And Gen X went down from the 70,000 parts per trillion initially proposed by Chemours to just 10. The same goes for PFH excess. For reference, the EPA's limit for lead in water is 10,000 parts per trillion, and for cyanide, 200,000.
It gives you a pretty clear indication of how concerned the scientific community is.
And just when we got EPA limits, we got a new administration in the US which might be reversing some of the PFAS bans. So you can't always depend on the regulators, and you seemingly can't depend on the companies that make this stuff to dispose of it safely. So what can you do?
Because one guy is like, yeah, fluoride makes people autistic. Does it? Does it, Junior? You sure these people just don't want to like things? Maybe their brain just wants to be a little different. You sure it's the fluoride? I'm sure your muscles were from your healthy diet too, right? Yeah. Yeah.
If your water is contaminated, you might want to consider getting a PFAS certified filter. Reverse osmosis, granulated active carbon, and ion exchange filters are all capable of removing PFAS out of drinking water. But the responsibility to filter drinking water shouldn't come down to the individual.
It should not.
PFAS should be captured at the source during manufacturing,
True.
before they ever reach the environment. And some companies, like Pure Affinity, are developing custom
Get your
filters to make that happen.
anti-poison filters.
So very lab-looking lab.
Exactly, yeah. So could
Why
you
don't we
walk me
just
through
stop?
like, what all these pipes do and what do you have in
Why
here?
don't we just stop?
This water is representative of where
poison
you've
out.
had a big firefighting foam incident. So you want to filter this water, but basically the concept is take it from the top through the vessel. As it passes through this material, it basically sticks on to some of the PFAS chemicals in water, and then you run into another part of treatment, and a third one.
To me, it seems like if
Yes, scalding hot take. Let's not put poison in the water ahead of time so there's not poison in the water. What are your guys' thoughts? Kind of woke. You're right. I'm a proper Bernie Sanders over here. I'm a real fucking Hassan Hobby head. Thinking about picking up a pronoun or two.
PFAS are so like bioaccumulative and actually persistent and stable, they don't really react with things. So how do you force them to react with stuff in here?
Basically taking advantage of this long organic tail as well as the polar head. And so you can have some electrostatic interactions with the polar head, and then you can have some hydrophilic and hydrophobic interactions with the tail.
It's
by
just
combining
crazy.
these three binding mechanisms.
It's just crazy that like they should not be doing business. Like straight up, they should have been exploded into the sun. They willingly did not report toxicity in the chemicals they were selling for decades. They should be shot into space. Period. Like there should not be a discussion here. They've poisoned everyone permanently.
You increase massively your likelihood of binding PFAS, even if it's still difficult.
Right. Do the levels drop 100% already here, or do you see a gradual decrease in PFAS?
That's
as
the
you
cool
go down?
question.
Okay.
So in the beginning, it drops 100% after this one.
Oh, so problem solved, or?
The problem solved for the time being.
Okay.
What we see right now is it will last about 40,000 volumes of this vessel. So a 10-liter vessel would basically provide all
Nothing
of the
like some
PFAS treatment
fun
for a household
titration.
In a year.
for a year.
You want this to be in factories first, so it never
Yeah.
gets into the water.
Yeah. We're talking to the fluorochemicals manufacturers, and they're really trying to move forward rather than just wait for regulations.
Everyone's true risk from PFAS will be different. It depends on dozens of factors, like your water contamination, your lifestyle, what you eat. But how much should you really worry
That is a
about it?
shitty looking
Like,
margarita.
if I'm at 17 or 18 parts per billion, is that the
looks so
equivalent
awful.
of drinking a beer a night or going out in the Australian sun without sunscreen?
So what I like to do is create this hierarchy of risk. And in
Dr.
terms of
Mike.
hierarchy of risk reduction, number one on that is stopping smoking, exercising, consuming a healthy whole food diet, and making sure you're getting 7 to 9 hours of sleep. Then you have medium levels of
That's
intervention,
crazy.
seeing your primary care doctor, controlling your cholesterol numbers. And then on the lower tier that you have, PFAS probably falls into that lower tier.
Being preventative about PFAS exposure is currently our only option because there are no approved medical treatments available.
However, if you compare PFAS contamination between the sexes, male levels are consistently higher. At least up until around the age of 50, when menopause usually starts.
This is partly because menstruation, birth, and lactation are all ways PFAS can escape the body. PFAS can pass through the placenta and into the fetus during pregnancy.
I guess that's true.
And then the baby can also get exposed.
I didn't even think about that. I guess women do have a leg up because they do actually frequently remove blood from their body, which would remove some PFAS from their bloodstream. Damn. Fuck you guys. What the hell?
Exposed through breast milk.
It's something that pregnant people should be extremely careful
Just when
about.
I thought
young
men couldn't
children
get it
are
any
incredibly
harder.
Susceptible. They're drinking more water, they are growing, they are near surfaces like treated carpets.
Now, not everyone has to change their lifestyle because of PFAS.
But if you're in a high-risk group because of pregnancy or because you live or work in a PFAS-contaminated area, you might want to consider it.
Firefighters have especially high PFAS levels because their gear and foams are laced with them. Remarkably, a 2022 study found that when firefighters donated blood or plasma frequently enough, they reduced their PFAS levels by up to 30% within a year.
And it's kind of ironic that our health system's coming back to bloodletting.
What do you think about the idea of donating blood as a way to reduce PFAS in the body?
I've never heard of that as a strategy. That's kind of interesting. Well, I definitely recommend people donate blood more frequently, not because of PFAS exposure, but because of the fact we desperately need blood.
Wouldn't you just be giving more of it to somebody else? Wouldn't you just be giving PFAS? Wouldn't you just be moving it? That's just like when cities like push out homeless people instead of just helping them. That they just go somewhere else. They don't actually disappear. It's just someone else's issue or different locations issue. You don't actually fix anything. You just go, I don't want to see that. Move that there. Yeah, double it and give it to the next person. Literally. Yeah, literally.
What's important to note is that, especially in this current administration, we need to be very careful about shifting budgets away from research agencies. Because without that research, the guidance that I'm giving is going to be significantly more.
Stop overthinking blood donating, Sneeg. You are being a wiener. Not a wiener.
Flawed. The reason I'm able to talk about what we know and what we don't know comes from that research. So if we're going to be cutting the budgets to these major agencies and letting scientists go, we're only going to get worse and worse information.
We are still a good few years away from proper medical treatment and better PFAS regulations because this is extremely tricky. There are places where we should ban PFAS completely, like hygiene products, cosmetics, and food packaging. And some countries are already doing that. But we also can't ban PFAS altogether, at least not yet, because we still rely on these chemicals for things like medical implants, and it's currently impossible to make semiconductors for our electronics without them.
All the tubing for the vaccine manufacturing is PFAS-based. They take us to space as well, our spacesuits. But even in these niche applications, we have to be responsible around how we use it.
People are coming together from a lot of different disciplines to create destruction mechanisms, to create novel capture materials, and to create novel replacements. I am excited and inspired by all of the great work that's going on around me. So I think if people want to learn more, I would advise them to learn about the risks, but then also learn about the new technology that's being developed that will
makes me feel better that people are trying to be on top of it now.
You know, one of the most important
things it makes me feel better that there's people trying to work on it.
Discussions like what we're doing right here. If the story is and the information's out there, people can make informed choices about whether they want to continue purchasing things that have these materials in them. And what we're seeing is consumers, as they
it's certainly getting out there,
are saying, no, we don't want these chemicals. And companies are voluntarily coming forward and taking these chemicals out of products because the consumers are now demanding it.
We've been here before with leaded gasoline, Freon, and asbestos, and each time we did the research and made the right decision to phase these chemicals out. With PFAS, we're just starting to understand the problem, but I'm hopeful we'll make the same decision again.
Damn.
If you want to inform yourself more about PFAS, we've attached all the sources we've used to make this video down in the description. It's actually our longest episode ever, and we couldn't have made it without the help of our sponsor.
Was Orville on that list?
Because the consumers are now demanding it.
We've been here before with leaded
product. Companies are voluntarily coming forward and taking these chemicals, and because the consumers are now demanding it.
We've been here before.
I don't see him on there.
With leaded gasoline, but I'm hoping.
Wow, dude. Wow. That is crazy. I did not know what to expect clicking on this video. It grabbed my attention. Would I rather have PFAS poisoning you constantly or 7 seasons of zombie house flipper? No, you can't kill yourself. Both of those things are happening or happened. So I'm not sure what you want me to choose here because both of those have already occurred, most likely. If I had to choose one over the other, I would choose the cringy reality TV show over the poison in everything. Weirdly enough. Yeah, I'm going to have to go with the cringe show, not the poison. I know. Crucify me. I know. Kind of a hot take. Right, the PFAS. The PFAS in the water. The PFAS in the Teflon. The PFAS in the everything. That PFAS. Right, the PFAS after World War II. The PFAS that they used knowing it was poison. The PFAS that's in the entire planet, poisoning everybody. That PFAS. Right. All right. Oh my God, bro.
Do you think the worm in Junior's head is pro-peeing fast?
It's not. It's pee fast, not peeing fast. That's the Joe Bart maneuver, is peeing fast. Not the same thing. Pee fast, not pee fast. That's crazy. Damn, dude, what a video. What a video. I'm like genuinely mad. I'm like genuinely mad this company has like fucked us from 50 years ago. More, obviously. And they still exist. Like they're still just doing shit. Why haven't we shot this company into space forever? You don't manufacture anything ever again. The second you started handling sketchy shit, you swept it under the rug and pretended nothing was wrong. Fuck you? Fuck you. How can you let them get away with that? Because they make money when you're also poisoned. You're not less poisoned. Nobody's less poisoned. You're just as poisoned. Fucking get rid of them. Go. That's so insane. I can't believe that. Well, it's, you know, it's nice that they put this video in a little bow and that there is a little light at the end of the tunnel. They showed this company that's sort of finding good ways to filter it in plants. So before they even get dumped, and researchers and stuff, there's a nice little hopeful moment at the end. So that's good. Great video. Wow. Great video. What a fucking bomb drop from the year of 25. Sheesh.